In this video, we're going to be breaking down every draft class in the AFC East and giving each team a letter grade, and we can get right into it, starting with the Buffalo Bills. At the top of the second round, they got Keon Coleman. This is kind of a reach on my board. I had him in the 50s, but evaluating it from the Bills' perspective, the pick makes sense. Obviously, the NFL wasn't as high on A.D. Mitchell as I was, and for the Bills specifically, they have so many slot receiver types, they couldn't take a player like Ladd McConkey or Xavier Worthy. So even though I'm a little bit lower on the player, with them needing an X receiver, I understand how Keon Coleman ends up at the top of their board. I don't really think he projects as a great separator in the NFL. The 40 time got a lot of attention with Keon Coleman, but I think the lateral fluidity and burst out of his breaks is the main concern for me. But he's really physical at the catch point, and he's still a young player, so he has plenty of time to develop the nuances of route running and learn how to set up his breaks. He's also probably the best run blocking receiver in this class. With their second round pick, they took Utah safety Cole Bishop. I think it's a solid pick. I had him 70 on my board. He's a versatile safety that can line up deep. He can line up in the slot. He can play box safety. He's got the speed and fluidity to play man-to-man. If you're playing him in off coverage, he's explosive closing cushion, but he has really short arms, and I think in some ways he is more of a developmental player. He isn't great at playing the ball at the catch point. His lack of length plays a role in that, but there are also times that he's in good position and just isn't able to track the ball down the field, and he has a tendency to just go for the big hit, especially over the middle of the field. There are times that he gets a clean break on a dig route, and if he actually tried to play the ball, he could potentially have an interception, but he just lays a huge hit. And then in zone coverage, I think he's really good at processing stuff that's in front of him. So if he's in a hook zone and he's got a mesh concept with two shallow drags right in front of him, he can pass those off. But with routes that are developing behind him, that's where you'll start to see some coverage busts with Cole Bishop. Vertical switch concepts can give him issues. If he's in zone coverage over the middle of the field and there's a dig route developing behind him, sometimes he doesn't have a great sense for the angle to take to undercut the route. So there's still a lot of coaching points for Cole Bishop, but I think the natural talent is worth betting on. Their third round pick was Duke defensive lineman Dwayne Carter. This is a really interesting evaluation. His 2022 tape was a lot more impressive than last year's tape. Last year, you would see flashes of a dominant bull rush, but snap to snap, he wasn't really creating much displacement. I don't know if there was an injury or something, but the tape, the production, the efficiency all took a major step down this past season. I gave him an early 5th round grade. It's always hard to decide on players that have two back-to-back seasons that are so different from each other, but after getting to know him, if they felt like 2022 was the real Dwayne Carter, I understand taking that back half of day 2. They get Ray Davis in the 4th round, the running back out of Kentucky. I really liked his tape. He's got such a well-rounded, complete skill set for a running back. He has good contact balance. He rarely fumbles. He legitimately has a fully developed receiving skill set, which you don't normally expect for this type of running back. Normally 5'8.5", 211 pounds. You think it's just a pure power churn yards through contact. But Ray Davis can run routes. He can track the ball over his shoulder. They'd run him on wheel routes, seams from the backfield. Just purely on my tape grade, I'm a big fan of Ray Davis. I didn't love his vision, but the main reason I ended up with a lower grade on Ray Davis is that he's over 24 years old and he's got so much tread on the tires, 834 career touches, but overall he's still a really good player. And then I thought the Bills had a really good 5th round. They get Georgia center Cedric Van Pran at 141. He's an extremely smart player with heavy hands, violent run blocker. He's got 3 to 4 pancakes on every tape in the run game. His biggest issue and the reason that he fell, I think, is the slide quickness and lateral agility. If he over or undersets in pass pro, he has a hard time recovering leverage. Quicker interior rushers can get him with cross-face moves, and then in the run game, when he gets to the 2nd level, there are some times that he has a hard time securing his target in open space. And then Ulofoshio, the linebacker out of Washington, was one of my guys in this class, actually my 5th ranked linebacker, which sounds better than it actually is because I didn't really view this as a good linebacker class. He's an explosive linear athlete. He's got long arms. He can stack and shed, play through contact. He is an older player. I think there are some times in open space where he isn't the most fluid fluid athlete mirroring change of directions, but he's got really good instincts, shows some flashes in coverage. I really like this pick in the 5th round. And then they also got Troy edge rusher Javon Solomon, who I had a 4th round grade on. He has a unique build at just under 6'1", 246 pounds, but really long arms and massive hands. He's an explosive, bendy speed rusher, 17 sacks this past season. He's really good with his hands. He uses a lot of ghost moves and stab chops. Now, you want shorter edge rushers with long arms like this to be able to give you something as a power rusher. He hasn't unlocked a consistent bull rush at this point, and he was a good run defender in the Sun Belt. He was playing out of position, like playing 4-eye, even 3 technique sometimes, and he actually held up pretty well. But I think in the NFL, he's going to be a designated pass rusher, at least until he can add some weight. But I'm a big fan of Javon Solomon as a high ceiling dart throw. Tylan Grable in the 6th round, the offensive tackle out of Central Florida, I thought was fine. He's fast and explosive in a straight line. He had a 98th percentile vertical jump, 4.95 in the 40-yard dash. He's really violent and aggressive with his hands. He has excellent grip strength. He does have a bad habit in pass pro of lunging and overextending. There are sometimes he'll get beat by inside counters, or he'll be late to pick up a stunt. And I think some elements of his game are powerful, but he has a hard time unleashing that in the run game specifically because of his pad level. He just plays too upright to generate displacement off the line of scrimmage. Their other 6th round pick was Daquan Hardy, the Penn State slot cornerback. He's undersized, but he's extremely fast and explosive. His tape versus Ohio State was some of the best in this class. I was really impressed with his ability to turn his head and play the ball down the sideline while maintaining top speed. He also does a great job triggering downhill on screen passes. I didn't think he was very good at mirroring routes from man coverage. He can stick with stuff on the vertical plane, but once you cut inside or outside, he's fallen off of the route pretty consistently. His length also kind of limits him at the catch point. There were multiple diving pass breakup opportunities that he just missed, and the receiver caught it and ran for a bunch of yards after the catch. And then they took Travis Clayton out of England. I haven't watched him, but he's a 6'7" guard, which is pretty much unheard of, and he ran a 100th percentile 40-yard dash, 4.81, 35-inch arms. Just based off the build, that seems like a tackle, but we'll see if he develops into anything. So grading the class, I'm going to go with a C, which sounds like a bad grade. To me, C is average. I don't think they got a lot of insane value, and their first 4 picks were slight reaches on my board, but like I said, I don't have a major issue with either of them. I think it was pretty much an adequate draft, and I do like them trading back and accumulating capital. Moving on to the Miami Dolphins, I pretty much loved every pick in this class except for the first one. Penn State edge rusher Chop Robinson they take at 21st overall. I get the upside with Chop Robinson. He's got elite explosiveness off the line of scrimmage. That first step and the speed he's able to build up allows him to pretty much outrun tackles around the pocket. But to win in the NFL, he's going to have to develop his hand usage. He's going to have to add some pass rushing moves. He's got to be more consistent and more urgent going to that inside counter when the tackle oversets. And it's easier said than done with his size profile, but you'd like him to also add a speed to power element to his pass rushing plan. I get that they need an edge rusher, but I just think 21st overall for Chop Robinson is too rich for me. I thought their next pick was solid. Patrick Paul, tackle out of Houston. This is a player early in the process that a lot of people had mocked to them in the first round. He has rare physical traits, 6'7.5", 331 pounds, over 36-inch arms, and at that size, he is so fluid moving around the pocket, getting depth. At his level of competition, just his frame and movement skills alone allowed him to stay in front of pretty much every pass rusher he faced, and that's why he was so productive and efficient in pass protection this past season. But he's still a developmental player. He's going to have to tighten up his hand usage. He's got a tendency to be late and wide with his punch, and he'll let pass rushers into his frame. I think combining that with his top-heavy build could give him some issues against NFL power rushers when they're able to get under his frame and drive him back into the pocket. I also wanted to see more from him as a run blocker. I didn't really think he was a consistent finisher in that phase, but I think the value at 55 was decent, especially considering the run on offensive tackles. There's a lot of teams that were just forced to reach at that position, and I'm not going to punish them too heavily for it, but the Dolphins didn't even really have to reach. I had him as my 49th ranked player. And then in the 4th round, they get Jalen Wright, who I compared to Lamar Miller. He's a home run hitter with elite speed and explosiveness, but he isn't this light speed back. He's actually 210 pounds, only has 397 career touches, and he's just over 21 years old. He wasn't featured heavily in the passing game, but he's got reliable hands, really good pass blocker. I would say he's for sure one of the top 2 or 3 pass protectors in this running back class. So I really like that pick at 120, and then I love the Mo Kamara pick at 158. Colorado State edge rusher. He is very undersized, so I understand why he fell, but his speed, explosiveness, and bend around the corner, I think has a chance to work in the NFL. He just has this unique rushing style where he's able to bend around the corner, but also apply power to that outside shoulder and kind of compress the pocket as he's turning around the edge. He's got some hand moves. I don't know how effective they're going to be in the NFL with his size and length profile, but I'm excited to see what Mo Kamara can turn into. And then Malik Washington, I thought was another steal. I don't understand how he fell to the 6th round. He is undersized, but he's extremely productive after the catch. He led all FBS wide receivers last year with 35 broken tackles. He catches everything. He has a 2.5% career drop rate, 57% contested catch rate for his career. Those are both outstanding numbers. For a player of his size, he doesn't have that elite second gear. He's not necessarily someone that's going to take the top off the defense, and he is a slot only. I thought he really struggled with press coverage, but if you can get him a clean release, get him some design touches, I think Malik Washington has a chance to be productive as a rookie. Patrick McMorris in the 6th round, I had a UDFA grade on him. I just think there's some real athletic limitations with him as a safety. He's the kind of player you'd want to move to linebacker, but he's only 207 pounds, so I don't really see it with him, but it's a 6th round pick, doesn't matter. And then Taj Washington in the 7th round, the Dolphins were just cleaning up on these undersized slot receivers that everybody liked. Another player that's very undersized. He's not an elite athlete for his size, but he's an extremely skilled route runner. Only had 1 drop this past season on 74 targets. He can create after the catch. He's got 4 seasons of stable production that peaked this past season, and then he has 462 career special team snaps, so he adds value in that phase as well. I don't think he has the size or athletic traits to be a number 1 or probably even a number 2, but in the 7th round, like, there's no reason not to take Taj Washington. So for the final grade, the earlier the pick, the more of an influence it's going to have on the grade, and so the Chop Robinson pick is going to knock this down a little bit, but I'm still going to go with a B+. I think they found value everywhere else in the draft, and even Chop Robinson at 21, it's not like it's an egregious reach. I just disagree with the pick. So we're going with a B+ for the Miami Dolphins. Next up, we got the Patriots, who started off strong, taking my top ranked player at 3rd overall. I think Drake May is the Patriots quarterback of the future. He's got pretty much everything you want in a franchise quarterback outside of accuracy. He has the size, arm talent, athleticism, both in terms of straight line speed and change of direction skills. He attacks tight windows over the middle of the field. He has a great sense for when windows are going to open up in zone coverage. He can make off-platform throws. He can get rid of the ball from different release points. If Drake May just had above average accuracy, for me, he'd be in that Trevor Lawrence, Andrew Luck tier of like can't miss quarterback prospects. I think part of the accuracy conversation is a little bit unfair to Drake May because he was more aggressive than some of these other quarterbacks, attacking tight windows, pushing the ball down the field. So the sample size of throws that you're judging his accuracy on are just inherently a lot more difficult, but there are some inexcusable misses. I think especially within 5 to 10 yards, there's times where he just completely disregards footwork and sails a 5-yard swing route, but all the Patriots had to do was just not screw this up, and I think they accomplished that. Now with their next 2 picks, the Patriots did what a lot of teams in this draft ended up having to do, which is reach on receivers somewhere in the 30s to 40s and then reach on tackles somewhere in the 3rd round. Jalen Polk and Caden Wallace were both reaches on my board. I don't think they were egregious, and given the situation, the fact that they have to surround Drake May with some receiving talent and some pass protection, I understand it. I think Polk is just a really solid number 2, number 3 type of receiver. He catches with his hands, he attacks the ball in the air, he has some quick lateral movement skills to get in and out of breaks efficiently. He just doesn't have the size or athletic traits that you look for in a number 1 receiver, but I think he's a really solid player. They took Caden Wallace at 68, which is a massive reach on the consensus board where he's 156. I had him at 114, so I'm a good deal higher on Caden Wallace than most people. He has a really thick build. He looks like a New England Patriots offensive lineman. He has enough length to play on the outside. I think he can get enough depth to block a speed rush. I don't know if he has the reactive athleticism to mirror speed rushes and inside counters. I think guard could be a more natural fit for him, but I see Caden Wallace as someone that has potential as kind of a swing offensive lineman that can play some guard, play some tackle. For the most part, he is really good with his hands, so it is kind of a reach, but I don't hate the pick. Layden Robinson at 103, I didn't really get. He's massive, over 34-inch arms. He only weighed in at 302 at the combine. I think he might have dropped weight to try to run a better time or something. On tape, he looks a lot bigger than that, and he has some flashes of dominance as a run blocker. He can create displacement off the line of scrimmage. He's got a lot of power in both phases. I think the main problem with Layden Robinson is he just doesn't move his feet well in pass protection. His feet are consistently lagging behind his hands, and he'll be leaning into pass rushers as they're accelerating through the A-gap. He definitely has some traits to develop, but I think this was a bit too early for me. But I really like the Javon Baker pick at 110. He's not a great athlete in terms of straight line speed. He does have the size and length to survive on the outside, and I think the change of direction skills are really good. He has really crafty footwork, whether it's beating press or at the top of the route to manipulate the corner's leverage. And then if you just watch his highlights, you can see that he has the ball skills. He can high point the ball, he can adjust to it down the sideline, he can win at the catch point through contact, but he has an 11.4% career drop rate. There are just too many focus drops on his tape. I think last year a couple of them actually resulted in interceptions, so he can make some dominant highlight contested catches. He just isn't as consistent as you want actually bringing in the easy throws. And then a few late day 3 picks. They took South Carolina cornerback Marcellus Dial in the 6th round. He is a long and explosive press corner. He can bully you at the line of scrimmage. He is kind of stiff moving laterally. He's not great at mirroring receivers across the field, and I thought his run defense was some of the worst of any cornerback in this class. Joe Milton, assuming they stick with him at quarterback, is just a pure lottery ticket. He's got one of the strongest arms that I've ever seen, and he had the 2nd highest athletic score of anyone in this class. But when it comes to processing, decision making, field vision, accuracy, those are all major works in progress. And at 24 years old with all this college experience, I'm not that confident that he's going to develop the way that he needs to. But with his size and athletic traits, I think he could be an interesting conversion to tight end. And then Jaheim Bell in the 7th round is kind of an H-back move tight end. His size is going to really limit the role that he can play and what he can give you as a blocker, although he does give good effort in that phase. He has straight line speed to outrun linebackers down the seam. He's a creative ball carrier with good contact balance. And the main thing I was disappointed with in his tape is he's actually pretty stiff for being so undersized. He isn't really able to create as much separation as an intermediate route runner. So for the Patriots, I'm going with a C+. I was thinking C, but like if you get your franchise quarterback, I can't give that a C. Obviously, I love the Drake May pick. I like the value with Javon Baker. I think Polk and Wallace were slight reaches, but don't have a major problem with either of those picks. Layden Robinson's probably my least favorite pick, but it's day 3. And finally, we've got the Jets. Really liked their first pick, Olu Fashanu, tackle out of Penn State at pick 11. It would have been so easy for them to take another position and miss out on this tackle class, but I think they did the smart, responsible thing, getting Olu Fashanu. Even though he might not be a day 1 starter, he's going to be a developmental, long-term starter at left tackle, and in the short term, it's reasonable to expect one of their tackles to get injured. I think Olu's natural talent in pass pro stacks up with any tackle in this class. He's so light on his feet, he's got instant recovery skills. They just don't make a lot of tackles at his size that move their feet this well. The main thing he needs to work on in pass pro is just tightening up his hand placement. He does a good job of not overextending and being patient with his hands, but there are some times when he goes into strike that he's a little bit late or wide with his punch, and he'll let pass rushers get into his frame. And then he showed improvement as a run blocker this year. He's definitely got the athletic traits to be a plus run blocker, especially in a zone heavy scheme. I think that's still a development point for him, but the most important thing, keeping Aaron Rodgers upright, I think Olu Fashanu helps you with that. They took Malachi Corley with the first pick of the 3rd round. I'm not a huge Malachi Corley fan. He's built like a running back. He's one of the best yak receivers in this class, especially when you look at his power after the catch. He can truck defenders in the open field, unlike most receivers. I was kind of disappointed with his elusiveness. I'm not sure that the run through you strategy is going to be as translatable to the NFL. As a route runner, I think he has some natural talent, but he needs so much development at this point. He has a really hard time getting in and out of breaks cleanly. He'll kind of drift into contact at the top of the route route. Sometimes he won't even drift. He'll just launch into an off coverage defender. You can see on tape some of the change of direction skills and short area explosiveness where he could project as a decent route runner with some development, but the footwork is just nowhere near clean enough at this point. And then I didn't think he was very good at tracking the ball down the field or winning in contested catches. I just feel like his skill set right now is pretty limited, and what he does well, I don't think it's a sure thing that that's going to translate to the NFL. Braylon Allen at 134, that's actually exactly where I had him ranked, so I'm good with that pick. I was definitely lower on him than consensus, but back into the third round I think is perfect value for him. He has elite size and pretty good straight line speed for a player of his size. He's also the youngest player in this class, barely over 20 years old. There are times on tape where he's just a bulldozer in the open field. He can lower his shoulder and annihilate a linebacker, but I didn't think he consistently played up to the level of physicality that he's capable of. I actually kind of viewed him as more of a finesse runner in a lot of ways. He is very light on his feet, especially for a 235-pound running back. You specifically see this in the backfield. He's able to kind of dance around and avoid contact, and he was in a scheme this past year that just did not fit him at all. He needs to be taking carries from under center. This past year, he was running almost exclusively out of the shotgun, and if you go back to his 2022 tape that's actually more translatable to what he's going to be doing in the NFL, it was a lot more impressive. And then the other thing to mention with Braylon Allen is 9 career fumbles for this past season. Got to have a tighter grip on the ball. They get Jordan Travis in the 5th round. I also wasn't a huge Jordan Travis fan. He is one of the better touch throwers in this class, especially outside the hashes on like corners and hole shots. He's comfortable standing in the pocket, working through his progressions, targeting the middle of the field. I think his processing skills and ability within the pocket should translate to the NFL. He also does a great job of attacking linebackers when they turn their back to him. If he's got a seam route and the linebacker turns his jersey to him, he just fires it in there with great velocity. But he has such an awkward and truncated throwing motion that I think really limits his accuracy and just consistent ball placement. There were some brutal misses, especially over the middle of the field, multiple throws that just went right to a safety over the top. And he's a smaller quarterback that's 24 years old and I don't think has a great arm. So I didn't really see it with Jordan Travis, but 5th round is fine. They got Isaiah Davis a couple picks later, who I comped to Le'Veon Bell light. He's almost like a late career Le'Veon Bell. He's just not a very explosive or dynamic athlete, but he has elite vision and processing skills. Watching Isaiah Davis run is just mesmerizing. The way that he can zigzag through traffic and kind of dance around, but dance around with a purpose. He isn't just juking back and forth, staying in one spot. He's taking decisive jump cuts to get upfield and avoid traffic. He has good contact balance and play strength. I think there's a lot to like with Isaiah Davis as an early down back. He doesn't have reliable hands. I wanted him to be a much better pass blocker at his size. So at this point, I don't think he gives you value on 3rd down. And then their final 5th round pick was Quantez Stiggers out of the CFL. He's the only player in this class that I graded without watching their tape. I don't have CFL tape, but I did watch every snap that he took at the Shrine Bowl, and I just immediately knew this dude was going to get drafted. He has good size, decent athletic traits, looked comfortable in press man, just a really controlled and composed man coverage corner. Don't exactly know what to expect. He's a 5th round pick, so statistically probably not going to turn into anything, but I'm excited to watch him play. And then they took Jalen Key, the safety out of Alabama, in the 7th round. I did not watch him. So Olu Fashanu is the only pick in this class that I really liked, but there weren't any picks that I hated or had, major opposition towards. If Malachi Corley can become a reliable 2nd or 3rd option, then this is probably going to be a great draft class. I am going to go with a C, which again is not a bad grade. It's just kind of a standard draft class where for the most part you took players at appropriate value.